What's up, movie fans? My name is Atney, and you're tuning in to A Theater Near You, the show where I talk about and review films, give them a rating, and turn the conversation over to you. Today we're discussing Dunkirk, a 2017 film written and directed by Christopher Nolan. It's out July 21st. Let's dive straight into it. First of all, this film stars Fionn Whitehead, Enya Bernard, probably saying his name wrong, Tom Hardy, Jack Lowden, Mark Rylance, Tom Glencarny, Barry Keoghan, Kenneth Branagh, and Cillian Murphy. It's a very interesting story about the evacuation of the British and French troops from Dunkirk beach trying to get back to England. Why are they trying to get back? The German forces have pushed them basically to the edge of France, but they can't get across the water because the waters are too shallow. The Germans have a very powerful air force, and they've kind of pushed all 400,000 of these troops onto the beach itself, which, if you've been to a beach, it's wide open. There's no cover, so you have 400,000 troops stuck on this beach. They can't really get on their ships, or anytime they try to get on the ships, the Air Force just bombs them. There's very few friendly fighters trying to help, and it's the conflicts that arise from those events. So that's a basic summary of the story. I would say spoilers, but I can't spoil too much. If you open a history book, there's your spoilers. But if you've seen the trailer, if you've seen basically any of the trailers or the promotional material, you have a very good understanding of what this film is going to give you. There is some interesting elements that I was not expecting as far as the presentation, as far as what Nolan decided to do to tell this story. Basically, there's a breakup of sequence and events that take place, giving you kind of a time-lapse view. In reality, this story took place between May 26th to June 4th. Once you see the film, you will understand how Nolan decides to portray that, as opposed to giving you a kind of traditional day-night cycle. He decides to give you kind of three core groups that you follow throughout the film, and each core group is experiencing the event on a different day, and then it all kind of comes to a point. I don't know why. I wasn't expecting this element going into this film, but I can't say that it really subtracted anything from it. So that's the premise. That's kind of what it's about. Let's talk about it. What is this film like? From the get-go, I have never really been a huge Christopher Nolan fan. I appreciate his dedication to sticking to practical effects and wanting to create everything in real world and not use CGI. I appreciate his attention to detail, but I've never truly been blown away by something he's made. I enjoy things like Inception, Dark Knight. Dark Knight Rises wasn't really for me. I do really enjoy Memento and Prestige. Those are great films. So I had kind of medium hopes, shall we say, going into this film. But I gotta say, coming out of it, I really, really enjoyed what I saw here. As I kind of mentioned, there's not really a main character that you follow. As most traditional narratives, you basically have core groups that you follow. So actor Fionn Whitehead is with Enya Bernard. Again, I'm probably saying his name wrong. Apologies. And they are kind of the soldiers on the beach story. Tom Hardy and Jack Lowden are our pilots. They're British pilots. And we kick back to them a little bit. And then there's Mark Rylance, Tom Glencarny, and Barry Keoghan. And they're the father, two sons on the boats. As the story goes, the Navy cannot extract the men on military boats because they're too big, they're too heavy. So they activate these civilians across the sea at Dover and all over on the British coast to bring civilian boats across, and we follow Mark, Tom, and Barry as one of those people activated on a boat. So you follow these three core groups, and you're like, okay, well, how is that different from having a main character? Because there's not really much for them to do except for survive. They don't have a beginning, middle, end. We don't really learn much about these characters as to where they come from, what they like, what they dislike, who they are, where do they stand. We just see a snapshot of each of these individuals within this moment, within this battle or evacuation, whatever you want to call it. Some people don't like this approach to the film. I've already seen a couple of reviews of people talking down to the film of how it's hard to relate to, or it doesn't feel as organic or as much of a story as they wanted, a narrative story. But I really enjoyed the sort of brief look into a pre-existing world, if that makes sense. Sort of as you're coming into it as the audience, you feel like one of these people in these scenarios. You feel like a soldier on the beach, in my opinion. You feel like one of the guys on the boats. You're just trying to survive the movie. You don't really care about, where the guy next to you grew up and what his favorite food is and what he wants to do when he gets out. You just want to get off the beach. And I think Nolan does a really good job here presenting the story in that way. Another thing that really is great about this movie, and again, if you've seen the trailers, especially from those trailers, they're very tense. Driven by the sound and the tension in those stories. And a lot of that comes from the music. And Hans Zimmer, again, here working with Christopher Nolan, they've done a lot together, especially through the Dark Knight movies. Here, Hans Zimmer does a great job scoring this film. It's not as much of an orchestral soundtrack as you're probably familiar with him, or if you're familiar with his work, but it is a great, almost metronome style score that really pushes the film through. It adds to the tension, and I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of examples of using sound to ratchet up tension. And on that note, I'd like to transition into the sound portion of it. I don't really see myself talking about sound a lot, but the sound design in this film is almost controversial at this point. I've seen a lot of early reviews, people saying their theater was too loud, or the mixing was off, or something to that effect. And I thought the same thing when I screened this film, but I have to say, thinking it over now, that I gotta believe it was on purpose. First of all, I've seen too many people say that for it to be false, for it to be just the theater screwed up. But basically, the movie becomes very loud in certain parts, especially at the start. We see Fionn Whitehead and a few of the other soldiers walking through kind of the edge of the village right before the beach in France, in Dunkirk. And they're walking around, the movie's almost whisper quiet, and then they start getting shot at. And it's basically a jump scare, and it's very, very loud, especially in IMAX, which is the format I saw it in. It's very, very loud, almost to the point where it hurts. And I have to believe that this was on purpose. I don't know if you've ever been to a gun range or shot outside, or hopefully you've never been shot at, but it's very loud. It's startling. It's shocking how loud a gun is. And I have to believe that Christopher Nolan decided to have the audio mixed in this way to portray how jarring, how startling it is for these characters, and to give the audience the experience of being shot at, basically. So to that, I give the movie credit. Some people think it's too loud, and it is very loud. Regardless of if it's an effective way to portray that, it is still very loud. So if you are hearing sensitive, keep that in mind. As far as the visuals go, this movie is gorgeous. Christopher Nolan again delivers on his promise, more or less, to use as very few computer effects as possible. This movie all looks very real, very shot on location, very much authentic vehicles, props, all that stuff. It seems like we're right there on the beach in 1940. especially the planes. I was really impressed. The old Spitfires that they use, that Tom Hardy and Jack Lowden are in. I'm assuming they're not flying, but the planes are beautiful. There's a lot of great aerial shots of them swooping and diving and shooting at other German planes and flying over the water. And I gotta believe they found a few of these old planes. The whole film is very authentic and real. It's harsh and it's wonderful like that. The cinematography is pretty good. There's a few pretty striking and beautiful shots. Performances here, as far as acting goes, it's all pretty good. There wasn't anything that stood out as bad to me. Everything's pretty middle of the road. I wasn't really wowed by anyone. There's a little bit of a hype around the fact that Harry Styles from the band One Direction, this is his acting debut. He's in it a little bit, and he was fine. I don't really think he was good, bad, or terrible. He was just in it, and he played his part, and that was fine. Overall, guys, I did enjoy this movie quite a bit. I also got to say real quick, I love the runtime. Christopher Nolan movies are usually pretty long. This one's only 1 hour and 40, so I gotta love that as well. But it is a great film. I'd say it's worth your dollars. So I'm gonna give this one a 7 out of 10. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought of the movie down below in the comments. I'll get back to you guys. We'll have a conversation going about this movie. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter, where we'll be discussing this movie, as well as upcoming movies, movie news, what reviews you'd like to see next, and what I could be doing different to help you guys out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on A Theater Near You. Have a good one.